The day Elena signed the divorce papers, her husband laughed in her face. For 10 years, she had stood beside Marcus Vale, building his dreams, protecting his secrets, and sacrificing her own happiness to help him climb the corporate ladder. But the moment he became successful, he threw her away like she was nothing, replacing her with Vanessa, his glamorous mistress, who worked in the same company and never missed a chance to humiliate her. Then came the final insult. At the company's anniversary gala, Marcus and Vanessa mocked Elena in front of everyone for arriving with a quiet, poorly dressed man they believed was a homeless beggar. They called him useless. They called her desperate. They said she had fallen so low that even poverty looked like love to her. Elena said nothing. The man beside her only smiled. What they didn't know was that the beggar was Adrian Blackwood, the hidden trillionaire owner of the entire corporation they were so proud to work for. A man who had disguised himself to find out who in his empire was loyal, who was corrupt, and who deserved to be destroyed. And Marcus had just made the worst mistake of his life. In one unforgettable night, Adrian revealed the truth, exposed years of fraud, betrayal, and stolen company money, and turned the entire room against the people who had once thought they were untouchable. By sunrise, Marcus and Vanessa lost their jobs, their fortune, their reputation, and every powerful friend they had bought with lies. But Adrian wasn't finished. Because what he did next didn't just shock them. It left them bankrupt, broken, and begging the same woman they had humiliated for mercy. Long before the cameras flashed, before the ballroom froze into silence, before Marcus Vale discovered that arrogance could become a coffin with gold handles, Elena had been the kind of woman people underestimated because she did not announce her pain. She had always been quiet in the most dangerous way. Not weak, not timid, quiet. The type of quiet that listened while powerful men bragged too loudly. The type that remembered dates, signatures, passcodes, names whispered behind half-closed doors. The type that saw the smallest stain on the whitest shirt and knew exactly where the blood trail began, even when no one else cared to look. Marcus had once called that quality adorable. Back then, they had been newly married and broke, living in a small apartment above a laundromat where the floor trembled every time the machine spun. He had worked as a junior accountant at Blackwood Meridian Group, a multinational empire so enormous that its logo appeared on hospital wings, aircraft engines, luxury hotels, shipping fleets, and even the software used in government offices. Elena had worked nights as an assistant bookkeeper for a small legal office and spent her mornings helping Marcus rehearse presentations. He was ambitious, polished, and hungry. She was thoughtful, precise, and loyal. When Marcus came home angry because his manager ignored his ideas, Elena stayed awake until 2 in the morning helping him turn scattered complaints into clean strategies. When he forgot the names of investors, she made flashcards. When he panicked before his first executive meeting, she pressed his suit, tied his tie, and told him that greatness did not arrive in a carriage. Sometimes it came limping through exhaustion. He had kissed her forehead then. One day, Marcus had whispered, "When I'm at the top, everyone will know it was because you believed in me first." Elena believed him. That was the tragedy. The first time Marcus stole from her, it was not money, it was a report. She had written it at their kitchen table while rain tapped at the window, and Marcus slept with his head resting on his folded arms. It was an internal cost reduction proposal, something he had been assigned but did not understand. Elena had reorganized it completely, adding projections, identifying wasteful vendor contracts, and even noticing that one supplier had been overcharging Blackwood Meridian through duplicate invoices. "This is good," Marcus had said the next morning, reading it while standing barefoot in their tiny kitchen. Elena had smiled sleepily over her coffee. "Use whatever helps." He used all of it. A week later, he came home carrying champagne, grinning like a prince. "They loved my proposal," he said. "My proposal," Elena teased. "Our proposal," he corrected quickly, wrapping his arms around her. "You and me, always." But when his promotion came, there was no hour. At the company's celebration, Marcus stood beneath a silver banner and accepted applause while Elena watched from the back, her cheap black dress hidden behind a pillar. He never mentioned her name. That night, she told herself it didn't matter. Love, she thought, was not a courtroom. Not every sacrifice required a witness. Years passed, and the apartment above the laundromat became a condo. The condo became a penthouse. Marcus's worn briefcase became imported leather. His nervous laugh became a smooth executive chuckle. He learned which wine to order, which watch to wear, and how to pause before answering questions so people mistook calculation for wisdom. Elena changed too, though no one noticed. She became lonelier. Blackwood Meridian's headquarters rose over the city like a blade of glass, 68 floors of mirrored confidence. Marcus's office climbed with him, floor by floor, title by title, until he became Chief Strategy Officer of the North American Division. He wore success like armor, and Elena began to feel like something he had outgrown and stored in a closet. The first time she saw Vanessa Cross, the woman was laughing beside Marcus near the elevators. Vanessa had honey-colored hair, sharp red nails, and the kind of beauty that seemed designed to make other people feel like background decoration. She had joined Blackwood Meridian as a public relations director, but within months, she was appearing in executive meetings, handling investor events, and standing close to Marcus in company photographs. Too close. Elena remembered the way Vanessa looked at her that first day. Not with surprise, with assessment. Like Elena was an old piece of furniture in a room Vanessa planned to redecorate. Elena, Marcus said, a little too brightly, this is Vanessa. She's been helping with the anniversary campaign. Vanessa extended a hand. Her smile was perfect. Her eyes were not. So you're Marcus's wife, she said. He's told me so little. It sounded like an accident. It was. After that, signs appeared everywhere, small enough for Marcus to deny and sharp enough for Elena to bleed on privately. A lipstick stain on a shirt collar, a hotel receipt folded inside a briefcase, messages that vanished when Elena walked into a room, sudden business trips, late meetings, Vanessa's perfume clinging to Marcus's coat like a confession. When Elena finally asked him, Marcus looked offended. "Do you hear yourself?" he said, standing in their marble kitchen with one hand in his pocket. "You sound insecure." "I sound like your wife. You sound like someone who's forgotten how hard I work." That was how he did it. He turned every wound into her fault. If she asked questions, she was suspicious. If she stayed silent, she was cold. If she cried, she was dramatic. If she stopped crying, she was impossible to love. One winter evening, she found him on the balcony talking softly into his phone. "No, she has no idea," he said. The city lights glittered beneath him. His reflection hovered in the glass door, calm and handsome and empty. Elena stood there unseen, holding a folded towel. Then Marcus laughed. Not loudly, not cruelly. Worse, naturally, as though betrayal had become easy. The next morning, a black envelope arrived at the penthouse. It had no return address, no stamp, just her name written in dark ink. Elena Vale. Inside was a single photograph of Marcus and Vanessa entering a private club together, his hand placed at the small of Vanessa's back. Beneath it was a note. "Some masks fall only when the room is full." No signature. Elena read the note 3 times. Her hands did not shake until the 4th. She should have thrown it away. Instead, she placed it inside a box where she kept old birthday cards, wedding photographs, and the first anniversary letter Marcus had written before success taught him to be ashamed of tenderness. She did not know then that the envelope was not a warning. It was the first move on a chessboard built years before she ever learned she was standing on one. The man who sent it was not trying to hurt her. He was trying to see whether she would look away. Adrian Blackwood, had been watching Blackwood Meridian from the bottom up for nearly 18 months. To the world, Adrian Blackwood was a rumor with a bank account large enough to bend countries. He had inherited the Blackwood Empire after his father, Alistair Blackwood, died suddenly during an international acquisition crisis. The official story was simple. Adrian disliked publicity, governed through a private board, and preferred to live between Zurich, Singapore, and a private island no journalist had ever photographed clearly. The real story was colder. Adrian had spent years dismantling rot inside his father's company. Alistair Blackwood had built the corporation on a brutal but simple principle. Power was only useful if it could survive inspection. He had demanded clean audits, direct accountability, and personal loyalty to the people who did the work no one clapped for. When a company grows tall, he once told Adrian, the shadows grow longer. Never trust the view from the penthouse. Walk through the basement. As a child, Adrian thought it was just one of his father's strange lessons. Alistair would take him through service entrances instead of front doors, introducing him to security guards, janitors, kitchen staff, junior clerks, drivers, and mailroom workers. He remembered names. He attended funerals. He paid medical bills anonymously. He noticed who held elevators for others and who pretended not to see them. People show you their souls, Alistair said, when they think you don't matter. Years later, after Alistair's death, Adrian discovered files buried inside a private archive. Internal complaints ignored, whistleblowers pushed out, vendor contracts inflated, shell companies connected to executives who smiled in shareholder videos. Blackwood Meridian was still powerful, but parts of it had begun to rot under polished marble. The North American division was the worst. And at the center of the rot stood Marcus Vale. Not openly, Marcus was too careful for that. His signatures were often absent. His instructions came through assistants, middle managers, private channels, and favors disguised as strategy, but money leaked wherever his shadow passed. Competitors received confidential projections before bids closed. Vendors with no history won enormous contracts. Employees who questioned anomalies found themselves transferred, demoted, or quietly ruined. 3 people had tried to report him. 1 resigned. 1 was blacklisted. 1 died in a car crash that police ruled accidental, though Adrian had never liked the timing. So Adrian disappeared from boardrooms and entered his own company through the service doors. He grew a beard, cut his hair unevenly, wore old coats, scuffed shoes, and fingerless gloves. Some days he was a courier, other days a temporary maintenance worker. Sometimes he sat outside headquarters holding a paper cup, watching who stepped over him and who looked down with disgust. He learned more in silence than executives revealed in reports. Vanessa Cross once spilled coffee on his sleeve in the lobby and snapped, "Watch where you're standing." Marcus once told security, "Keep people like that away from the front entrance. It makes us look cheap." Elena once stopped. It had been raining that day, a cold grey rain that turned the sidewalk into a mirror. Adrian sat near the side entrance in a torn coat, pretending to struggle with a broken umbrella. Executives passed him without seeing him. Vanessa walked around him with an annoyed sigh. Marcus stepped over his cup and entered the building while talking into his phone. Elena came 5 minutes later, carrying a folder Marcus had forgotten at home. She saw Adrian. Not the costume, him. "Are you hurt?" she asked. Adrian kept his head low. "No, ma'am." "Have you eaten today?" He hesitated. People often offered coins. Some offered pity because it made them feel generous. Elena offered neither. She stepped beneath the awning, opened her bag, and took out a wrapped sandwich and a bottle of water. "It's turkey," she said. "No mustard. I hate mustard, so I assume everyone else should be spared." Adrian almost smiled. She noticed his hand, where an old scar crossed 2 knuckles, and for one strange second her eyes narrowed as though something about him did not fit the picture. Then the security guard approached. "Mrs. Vale," he said, embarrassed, "you shouldn't be out here. Mr. Vale is waiting upstairs." Elena's expression cooled. He's not bothering anyone. Company policy. Then perhaps the policy needs manners. The guard flushed. Adrian watched her enter the building, leaving warmth behind like a match struck in a tunnel. Later, when he checked the folder she had carried, he discovered it contained Marcus's briefing notes for a vendor consolidation proposal, one that matched suspicious shell company patterns already under investigation. That was the day Elena Vale became more than Marcus's wronged wife in Adrian's mind. She became a witness he did not want destroyed. 3 months later, Marcus filed for divorce. He did it in the coldest way possible, through lawyers. Elena was served at home while standing beside the dining table where she had once arranged flowers for their anniversaries. The courier looked apologetic. The envelope felt heavier than paper should. Marcus did not come home that night. When he finally arrived the next morning, he smelled faintly of expensive hotel soap. "Elena," he said, removing his cufflinks as if discussing whether this doesn't need to be ugly. She stood in the doorway of their bedroom. "You filed without talking to me." "I tried talking for years." "No, you avoided talking for years." He sighed. "This is exactly why." The cruelty was not in his words. It was in how tired he sounded of being confronted with the consequences of his own choices. "Is it because of Vanessa?" she asked. Marcus looked at her then, and for 1 second the mask slipped, not with guilt, with irritation that she had made him say the obvious. "Vanessa understands my world." Elena almost laughed. "Your world?" "The pressure, the expectations, the circles I move in now." "The circles I helped you enter." His face hardened. That was when she understood. Marcus did not hate her because she had failed him. He hated her because she remembered who he had been before applause, and memory is unbearable to people who reinvent themselves through lies. The divorce moved quickly because Marcus wanted it too. He offered a settlement that looked generous on paper, but was insulting compared to what he had hidden. Elena's lawyer, a tired woman named Ruth Calder, urged her to fight. "There are assets missing," Ruth said, tapping a file. "I can smell it." Elena looked at the documents spread across the conference table: properties under holding companies, stock transfers, deferred bonuses, expense accounts, trust instruments. Marcus had built a maze around money. "How long would a fight take?" Elena asked. "Months, maybe years." "And how ugly?" Ruth paused. "Very." Elena thought of headlines, depositions, Vanessa smirking outside courtrooms, Marcus calling her unstable, former friends pretending not to choose sides while choosing him completely. She signed. Not because she surrendered. Because something in her had gone still. Sometimes a person is pushed so far past heartbreak that they arrive somewhere quieter, where pain stops begging to be understood and begins collecting evidence. At the courthouse, Marcus wore a navy suit and a silver tie. Vanessa waited outside near a black car, pretending to look at her phone. When Elena stepped out after signing, Marcus followed, smiling as though he had won a prize. "You'll be fine," he said. "You're resilient." Elena looked at him. Once that word from him would have sounded like admiration. Now it sounded like permission to hurt her because he believed she would survive it. Vanessa glanced up. Maybe she'll finally find someone more her level. Marcus laughed. There it was, clean, sharp, public. Elena walked away before either of them could see her face change. Across the street, beside a newspaper stand, Adrian Blackwood watched from beneath the brim of an old cap. His jaw tightened. Beside him, an elderly man selling newspapers muttered, "That woman looks like someone just burned her house down." Adrian folded a bill into the man's tip jar. "No," he said quietly, "they burned the wrong house." The first invitation to the company's anniversary gala arrived 2 weeks later. Elena almost threw it away. The envelope was thick ivory paper, embossed with Blackwood Meridian's silver crest, a raven holding a key. She had seen that symbol for years on Marcus's cufflinks, office walls, charity banners, and shareholder reports. She had never thought much about it until she noticed the same crest stamped in black wax on the mysterious envelope she had received months earlier. A raven holding a key. Some masks fall only when the room is full. Her fingers tightened around the invitation. She had not worked at Blackwood Meridian. Not officially, yet she had been invited as Marcus Vale's former spouse. That alone was strange. Companies loved clean images. Ex-wives were rarely placed beside chandeliers unless someone wanted tension. She called the number on the card. A woman answered with professional warmth. Blackwood Meridian Anniversary Committee. This is Elena Vale. I received an invitation, but I believe it may have been sent by mistake. There was a pause. Then the woman said, "No mistake, Mrs. Vale. Your attendance is personally requested." "By whom?" Another pause. "The office of the principal owner." Elena sat down slowly. Blackwood Meridian's principal owner was practically a myth. Adrian Blackwood did not appear at galas. He did not give interviews. He did not shake hands on red carpets. Some employees joked that he was an artificial intelligence, a ghost, or a tax arrangement with a human name. "Why?" Elena asked. "I'm afraid I don't have that information." After the call ended, Elena opened the invitation again. Inside, tucked behind the RSVP card, was a smaller piece of paper. "Not printed. Handwritten. Come as yourself, no diamonds required. No signature." Her breath caught. She thought of the homeless man in the rain, the note in the black envelope, the raven key. Then she remembered something else. Years ago, during Marcus's first major promotion, she had attended a Blackwood Meridian reception where Alistair Blackwood himself had given a rare speech. Elena had stood near the back, too shy to approach anyone. Alistair had been older then, silver-haired and sharp-eyed. He spoke about integrity not as decoration, but as infrastructure. "A dishonest company," he told the room, "is a tower built on melting ice. The collapse may take time, but it has already begun." Elena had clapped. Marcus had rolled his eyes afterward. "Old billionaire poetry," he said. "Nobody gets that rich by being sentimental." But Elena had noticed a young man standing beside Alistair in the shadows. Tall, silent, watchful, he wore a black suit with no visible logo, and when a waiter dropped a tray nearby, he was the only executive's son who bent to help pick up the broken glass. For one instant at the reception, he had glanced toward Elena. His eyes had been grey. The beggar in the rain had grey eyes. Elena did not sleep that night. Marcus called the following afternoon. She almost did not answer. "Elena," he said, voice clipped, "did you receive an invitation to the gala?" "Yes." "You're not coming." It was phrased not as a request, but as an order, an old reflex, husband to wife, executive to subordinate, owner to object. Elena looked out her apartment window at the city below. After the divorce, she had moved into a modest place on the east side, where the elevator sometimes stalled and the radiator hissed like an angry cat. She had expected to feel humiliated by the downgrade. Instead, she found the smaller space honest. Nothing in it pretended to love her. "I haven't decided," she said. Marcus exhaled sharply. "Don't make this difficult." "For whom?" "This is an important night. Investors, board members, international leadership. Vanessa and I will be there in an official capacity." "How nice." "Elena." She heard the warning in his voice, and beneath it, something even more satisfying. "Fear." "You're worried," she said softly. "Don't flatter yourself." "What do you think I'll do? Cry into the champagne, throw a scene, tell everyone how your mistress learned the floor plan of our home before our marriage ended?" "Silence." Then Marcus said, very quietly, "Be careful." Elena almost smiled. "I've been careful for 10 years. She hung up. The next day, Vanessa sent flowers. White lilies. Funeral flowers. The card read, "Wishing you peace as you move on." Elena carried them downstairs and gave them to the building doorman, whose wife loved lilies. Then she went back upstairs and removed her old wedding ring from the drawer where she had hidden it. For a long time, she held it in her palm. It looked smaller than she remembered. Not the diamond, the promise. She placed it inside an envelope and mailed it to Marcus's office with no note. 2 hours later, her phone rang non-stop. She did not answer. That evening, Elena saw the beggar again. He was sitting outside a closed bakery 3 blocks from her apartment, wearing the same worn coat, though the night was dry and warm. The city moved around him, impatient and glowing. People glanced once, then looked away. Elena stopped in front of him. "You're following me," she said. He looked up. In the rain, he had seemed older, roughened by hardship. Tonight, under the amber streetlight, she saw the illusion more clearly. The beard was real but trimmed carelessly on purpose. His posture was too controlled. His hands were clean beneath the grime. And his eyes, those grey eyes, belonged to someone who had never truly been powerless, only disguised. "I'm making sure you're safe," he said. Elena should have stepped back. Instead, she folded her arms. That sounds like something dangerous men say in movies. His mouth twitched. "Fair. Who are you?" "A man who owes you a sandwich." "That's not an answer." "No," he said. "It's the safest truth I can give you tonight." Elena stared at him. Cars hissed over wet pavement nearby. Somewhere, music drifted from a bar. The city seemed to hold its breath between them. "Did you send the envelope?" she asked. "Yes. The gala invitation. I arranged it." "Why?" His expression changed slightly, the almost smile vanishing. "Because your former husband has stolen more than money." Elena felt the air tighten. "What does that mean?" "It means he has hurt people who tried to speak. It means Vanessa Cross has helped him bury complaints. It means the board has been given lies wrapped in expensive paper. And it means you may be the one person close enough to him who still remembers the truth before he polished it." A cold sensation moved through her. "I don't have proof." "You have memory." "That's not enough." "It becomes enough when it points investigators toward what men like Marcus forget to hide." Elena looked down the street, half expecting Marcus to appear from the shadows. "Are you police?" "No." "Government?" "No." "Then what are you?" The man rose slowly. He was taller than she expected, not imposing in a loud way, but balanced, as though every movement had been trained never to waste energy. For the first time, Elena noticed the ring on his right hand, not gold, black steel, engraved with a tiny raven holding a key. Her heart struck once hard. "You're with Blackwood Meridian." His eyes held hers. "I am Blackwood Meridian," he said. The world did not tilt, it sharpened. "Elena," he continued quietly, "my name is Adrian Blackwood." For several seconds, she could not speak. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. Not because it was funny, but because grief had already cracked her life open so thoroughly that a hidden trillionaire dressed like a beggar seemed almost reasonable. Adrian watched her carefully. "That is not the reaction I expected. I gave a sandwich to one of the richest men alive. You also defended him from a security guard. I was defending a man from being treated like garbage." His gaze softened. "That," he said, "is why I trusted you." "Trust." The word landed heavily. Elena had once built her marriage on it. Now a stranger in torn clothes offered it like a blade laid handle first into her palm. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "Come to the gala." With you? Yes. She looked at his coat, dressed like this. Exactly like this. The answer should have shocked her. Instead, the old handwritten note returned to her mind. Some masks fall only when the room is full. You want them to mock me, she said. Adrian's eyes darkened. I want them to reveal themselves. And I'm bait. No, his voice cut through the night, quiet but firm. You are the mirror. They will decide what they see. Elena looked away. A bus passed, washing them in brief white light. In its windows she saw her reflection, a woman in a simple coat, hair pulled back, face thinner than before, eyes tired but unbroken. She had spent years trying not to embarrass Marcus, years softening her intelligence, shrinking her presence, swallowing words so his ego could breathe. Now someone was asking her to stand still, while his lies walked into their own fire. What happens if I say no, she asked. Then I continue without you. And Marcus. He will fall either way. Elena believed him. That frightened her more than any threat Marcus had ever made. Will people be hurt, she asked. Only reputations that were built on harm. She studied him. You speak like your father. For the first time, Adrian seemed truly surprised. You knew him. I heard him speak once, years ago. He said dishonest companies are towers built on melting ice. Adrian looked past her, toward the skyline. Blackwood Meridian's headquarters shimmered in the distance, a spear of light against the clouds. He said that to me first, Adrian murmured, after I lied about breaking a window. Elena smiled despite herself. What happened? He made me repair it with the maintenance crew. Good. He also made me apologize to the gardener whose roses I blamed. Better. Adrian's expression shifted, and for a moment she saw the boy he must have been before inheritance made him myth. Then the moment passed. The gala is in 6 days, he said. Elena breathed in slowly. 6 days to decide whether she would become a public fool or the final witness to Marcus's ruin. 6 days to choose between dignity in private and justice in a room full of people who had applauded the wrong man for years. I'll come, she said. Adrian nodded once, as though he had expected nothing else. As he turned to leave, Elena called after him. Mr. Blackwood. He looked back. If I come as myself, then you should too. A faint smile touched his face. At midnight, he said, not before. The gala night arrived dressed in rain. Blackwood Meridian's anniversary celebration took place at the Grand Aurelia Hotel, a historic building with marble columns, crystal chandeliers, and a ballroom famous for hosting presidents, royals, and people rich enough to pretend they disliked attention. Outside, photographers crowded beneath umbrellas. Luxury cars rolled up one after another. Women stepped out in gowns that shimmered like spilled stars. Men adjusted cufflinks worth more than most salaries. Security guards spoke into earpieces while scanning the guest list. Elena arrived in a black dress she had owned for 8 years. It was simple, elegant, and repaired by hand near the hem where she had once caught it on a cab door. She wore no diamonds, no designer label, no dramatic makeup. Her hair was swept back with a plain silver pin shaped like a leaf. The driver opened the car door, and for a moment the cameras ignored her. Then Adrian stepped out behind her. The effect was immediate. Whispers snapped through the entrance like static. He wore the same worn coat, the same scuffed shoes. His hair was untidy, his beard rough, his hands bare except for the black ring. Beside Elena's quiet elegance, he looked like a man who had wandered into the wrong universe. A photographer lowered his camera. One of the junior publicists near the entrance whispered, "Is that allowed?" Elena heard. Adrian heard too. He offered her his arm. "Last chance," he said quietly. Elena slipped her hand through his arm. "I survived Marcus Vale, I can survive bad manners." They walked inside. The ballroom was breathtaking in the way expensive things often are, designed to make people forget what they cost others. Chandeliers poured light over tables dressed in white linen. Silver ravens perched as centerpieces, each holding a tiny key in its beak. A string orchestra played near the balcony. Giant screens displayed Blackwood Meridian's history in glossy images. Factories, satellites, hospitals, smiling employees, Marcus standing in one video beside Vanessa as they unveiled a charity campaign. Elena felt Adrian stiffen at the image. "Something wrong?" she asked. "That hospital wing," he said softly. "Funds were diverted from it." Elena looked at the screen again. Marcus smiled there, handsome and proud, one hand over his heart. She remembered him practicing that expression in their old apartment mirror. "Not that smile, Maury, humble, tilt your chin down, you want them to trust you." Her own voice echoed in memory, young and loving and blind. A waiter approached with champagne, then hesitated when he saw Adrian. Adrian took a glass, thanked him by name, and the waiter's eyes widened. Elena noticed. "How do you know his name?" she whispered. "I know more people here than Marcus does." Across the ballroom, Vanessa spotted them first. She stood near a cluster of executives in a silver gown that caught every light in the room. Marcus stood beside her, laughing with a board member. Vanessa's smile froze when she saw Elena. Then her gaze moved to Adrian. Delight bloomed across her face. Not kindness, opportunity. She touched Marcus's arm and nodded toward the entrance. Marcus turned. His face went blank. For one perfect second, Elena saw fear flash through him, not because he recognized Adrian. He didn't. He saw only the danger of embarrassment. His ex-wife had arrived at the most important corporate event of his life with a man who looked poor, invisible, unacceptable. Marcus crossed the room quickly, Vanessa gliding beside him like a blade in silk. "Elena," he said through a smile that did not reach his eyes, "what are you doing?" "Attending," she said. "You were invited," Vanessa added sweetly, not encouraged to create a scene. Adrian sipped his champagne. Marcus looked him over with open contempt. "And who is this?" Elena felt Adrian's arm remain steady beneath her hand. "A friend," she said. Vanessa laughed lightly. Several people nearby turned. "A friend," she repeated. "Elena, darling, there are charities for this sort of thing. You didn't have to bring one as a date." A few guests chuckled. Elena's face warmed, but she kept her chin level. Marcus leaned closer, his voice low. "Have you lost your mind?" "No." "Then leave before you humiliate yourself." Adrian spoke for the first time. "She seems composed to me." Marcus's eyes cut to him. "And you seem lost." "Perhaps. This is a private corporate function. I was invited." Vanessa smiled wider. "By whom?" "The kitchen." Maury laughter. The sound traveled. Guests shifted closer, drawn by the scent of cruelty disguised as entertainment. Elena recognized some of them, executives who had eaten at her table, wives who had accepted her kindness, managers whose children's graduations she had attended. Now they watched as though she were a performance. Marcus noticed the audience and became taller. That had always been his gift. Give him witnesses, and he became whatever version of himself best controlled the room. "Elena," he said louder now, "I know the divorce has been difficult for you." There it was. The public concern, the polished knife. But bringing a homeless man here to make some kind of emotional statement isn't healthy. Vanessa placed a hand over her chest. "We're worried about you." Elena stared at her. 10 years of swallowed words rose like a tide, but she did not speak. Not yet. Adrian had told her the room would decide. So she let it. Marcus turned to Adrian. "Listen, friend, I don't know what she promised you, but this isn't a shelter. Security can help you find the exit." Adrian tilted his head. Do you often speak to people that way? When they trespass, yes. I see. Vanessa stepped closer, lowering her voice just enough to sound intimate while ensuring everyone heard. Elena, you really should have more self-respect. First you couldn't keep your husband, and now this. The room inhaled. Even Marcus glanced at Vanessa, surprised by how far she had gone. Elena felt the words strike, not because she believed them, but because some part of her still remembered being a younger woman folding Marcus's shirts, waiting for him to come home, hoping love could be repaired if she just found the right place to stitch. Adrian's hand shifted under hers. A warning. Or support. She could not tell. Before Elena could answer, an older woman pushed through the gathering crowd. Ruth Calder, her divorce lawyer, wearing a deep green dress, and the expression of someone who had been waiting all evening for fools to speak loudly. Elena, Ruth said warmly, you look beautiful. Marcus's jaw tightened. Ruth, I didn't realize ambulance chasers were on the guest list. Ruth smiled, and yet here we both are, Marcus. Vanessa rolled her eyes. This is getting pathetic. No, Adrian said softly, it is becoming useful. Marcus frowned. What did you say? But a bell chimed before Adrian could answer. The lights dimmed. A voice announced that the formal program would begin in 10 minutes. Guests began drifting toward their tables, buzzing with fresh gossip. Marcus stepped closer to Elena one last time. You are going to regret this, he said. Elena looked at him, and suddenly she remembered another night years ago, long before Vanessa, long before Marble Kitchens, when Marcus had come home shaking because he had made a mistake in a report. He had been terrified he would lose his job. Elena had stayed up until dawn helping him correct it, then held his face in her hands and said, You are not your worst moment. How strange, she thought now, that she had once saved him from becoming the man he had chosen to be. No, Marcus, she said quietly. I already regret enough. He walked away. Vanessa followed, but not before giving Adrian one final look of disgust. Adrian watched them go. Elena, he said, are you all right? She looked around the ballroom. People were still whispering, some pitying, some amused, some embarrassed for her but not enough to defend her. A server passed carrying a tray. Elena recognized him as the same waiter Adrian had greeted by name. He glanced at Adrian, then gave the smallest nod. Across the room, a security guard adjusted his earpiece. Near the stage, a technician checked the giant screens. A woman in a navy suit opened a black folder stamped with the Raven key. Foreshadowing settled over the room like thunderclouds. Yes, Elena said, I'm all right. Their assigned table was near the front. Marcus noticed that too. He had expected Elena to be seated somewhere distant, perhaps near former spouses, minor donors, retired employees. Instead, her place card sat at table 1, 2 seats from the podium. Adrian's card simply read Guest of E. Vale. Marcus laughed when he saw it. Guest, he said to Vanessa, that's generous. Vanessa leaned toward him. Maybe he'll steal the silverware. Elena heard, but did not look over. The program began with speeches from board members, each one polished and hollow enough to echo. They praised growth, innovation, leadership, trust. They spoke of Blackwood Meridian as a family, which Elena found almost funny. Families did not usually require non-disclosure agreements to hide their bruises. Marcus was called to the stage midway through dinner. Applause followed him. He moved like a man born beneath spotlights. Vanessa watched with shining pride from the table, already imagining herself beside him in future photographs, perhaps as his wife, perhaps as something grander if his rumored appointment to regional president became official. Marcus stood at the podium and smiled. 25 years, he began, of excellence, 25 years of courage, 25 years of building not just a corporation, but a legacy. Elena stared at his hands gripping the podium. Those hands had once held hers in a courthouse when they married. Those hands had signed false statements. Those hands had removed his wedding ring before he told her the truth. And while Mr. Adrian Blackwood could not be with us tonight, Marcus continued, we honor his family's vision by continuing to lead with integrity. Beside Alina, Adrian went very still. She did not look at him, but she felt the change, a quietness sharper than anger. Marcus continued speaking, his voice swelling with confidence. Integrity is not a slogan, it is the foundation of everything we do. Ruth Calder nearly choked on her wine. On the stage screen behind Marcus, a slideshow shifted from historical images to a live camera feed of him speaking. His face appeared 20 feet high, handsome and sincere. Alina wondered how many people had been fooled by that face. Then suddenly, the screen flickered. Just once. Most people did not notice. Adrian did. His eyes moved toward the technician near the side wall. The technician touched his earpiece. Marcus kept speaking. When I joined this company as a junior accountant, I had nothing but a dream and a work ethic. Alina's hand tightened around her napkin. A dream and a wife who built the ladder beneath your feet. I learned that leadership means sacrifice, Marcus said. Another flicker. This time Vanessa noticed, her smile faltered. The image corrected. Marcus lifted his glass, to Blackwood Meridian, to the future, to loyalty. The room applauded. Adrian did not. Neither did Alina. Marcus's eyes found them in the front row. For a moment, triumph curled his mouth. He believed he had won the room back. He believed Alina had embarrassed herself while he had risen above it. He believed the beggar beside her made her small. Then the master of ceremonies returned to the podium. Thank you, Mr. Vale. And now, before our final award presentations, we have a special message from the office of the principal owner. The ballroom changed. Not visibly, but Alina felt it. A tremor passed through the executives, board members straightened. Vanessa looked at Marcus. Marcus looked confused, then pleased, as though expecting praise from the unseen billionaire himself. The lights dimmed further. The giant screen turned black. White words appeared. Some masks fall only when the room is full. Alina stopped breathing. Marcus's smile vanished. Vanessa whispered, "What is this?" The screen changed. A video appeared, security footage from a private conference room. The timestamp showed a date from 9 months earlier. Marcus sat at the head of a table with Vanessa beside him and 3 vendor representatives across from them. Audio filled the ballroom. Marcus's voice, clear and unmistakable, said, "The bid needs to look competitive, not cheap, believable." One vendor replied, "And the overage?" Vanessa leaned forward on the screen, routed through the communications consultancy, same as before. Gasps erupted. At the table, Vanessa went white. Marcus stood so quickly, his chair struck the floor behind him. "This is fabricated," he shouted. The video continued. Marcus smiled on screen. "By the time anyone audits it, I'll be too high up to touch." The ballroom exploded in whispers. The screen shifted again. Emails, bank transfers, shell company charts, signatures, audio clips, messages between Marcus and Vanessa, a spreadsheet showing diverted hospital funds, a recording of Vanessa instructing HR to bury a harassment complaint against a senior executive because Marcus needs him clean until the merger closes. A confidential memo Alina recognized because she had drafted the original framework years ago, now attached to a contract that had paid millions into a hidden entity. Every lie had a receipt. Marcus pushed toward the stage. "Turn it off," he shouted. "Turn it off right now." Security moved, but not toward the technician. Toward Marcus. That was when Adrian stood. He did not rush, he did not shout, He simply rose, and the room somehow felt it before understanding why. Elena remained seated, looking up at him. He removed the old coat. Beneath it, he wore a perfectly tailored black suit. The transformation was not magic, it was worse. It was truth stepping out of costume. A woman in a navy suit approached, carrying a small case. Adrian opened it and removed a raven key lapel pin made of black platinum. He fastened it calmly to his jacket. The board chair, an elegant man named Howard Ellison, stood with a face drained of color. "Mr. Blackwood," he whispered. The words traveled faster than any scream. "Mr. Blackwood." The ballroom fell silent. Marcus froze at the foot of the stage. Vanessa gripped the table as though the floor had vanished. Adrian walked to the podium. Every step sounded final. He looked out over the room, not like a celebrity, not like a host, but like a judge who had already read the sentence and was only waiting for the guilty to stop lying. "My father," Adrian said, "used to say that a company does not die when it loses money. It dies when decent people learn that telling the truth is more dangerous than staying silent." No one moved. "For 18 months, I have walked through this company unseen. I have sat in your lobbies, cleaned your conference rooms, delivered files to your offices, and waited outside your doors. Some of you treated me with kindness when you believed I had nothing to offer. Some of you treated me with contempt when you believed there would be no consequence." His gaze moved briefly to Elena. "She gave me food in the rain." A murmur passed through the room. "She defended me when security tried to remove me from a public sidewalk. She did not know my name. She did not know my wealth. She believed I was poor, and still she treated me as human." Elena felt her throat tighten. Adrian looked at Marcus. Marcus Vale stepped over me. Marcus's mouth opened, but no words came. Vanessa Cross spilled coffee on me and blamed me for standing in her way. Vanessa's eyes filled with panic. Adrian turned back to the room. "Tonight was not a test of fashion, it was a test of character. Many of you failed quietly, a few failed loudly." His eyes returned to Marcus and Vanessa. "And 2 of you failed criminally." Marcus finally found his voice. "You can't do this. You don't understand the division. You don't understand what I've built." Adrian's expression did not change. "I understand exactly what you built. A theft network dressed as strategy. A retaliation pipeline disguised as performance management. A public charity initiative used to launder reputation, while funds meant for patients were rerouted to companies controlled by your associates." "That's a lie." Adrian nodded toward the screen. The next slide appeared. It was a scanned document. Elena's stomach dropped. Her handwriting appeared in the margins. An early strategy draft from years ago, the one she had helped Marcus create at their kitchen table. But beneath, it was a later version with altered projections, inflated vendor allocations, and Marcus's digital approval chain. Adrian spoke calmly. "You built your career by stealing from the woman you later humiliated. Then you used the credibility she gave you to steal from this company." The room turned toward Elena. For once, not with pity. With recognition. Marcus looked at her, and she saw the accusation forming before he said it. "You did this," he snarled. Elena stood slowly. "No, Marcus," she said, "you did." Vanessa snapped, "You bitter little." "Enough," Adrian said. "One word." The room obeyed. Adrian opened the black folder on the podium. "As of this moment, Marcus Vale is terminated for cause. Vanessa Cross is terminated for cause. Their access to all Blackwood Meridian properties, accounts, systems, and communications channels has been revoked. Evidence has been delivered to regulatory authorities, law enforcement, and the Independent Audit Committee." Vanessa staggered back. Marcus laughed once, a broken sound. "You think termination scares me? I have contracts. I have equity, I have protections. You had protections, Adrian said. The screen changed again. A list of clauses appeared: morality provisions, fraud triggers, clawback rights, deferred compensation forfeiture terms, indemnity exclusions. Ruth Calder leaned toward Elena and whispered, I want to marry that legal team. Adrian continued, your bonuses for the last 7 years will be clawed back. Your unvested equity is cancelled. Your vested shares are frozen pending fraud review. Your company-backed loans are due immediately upon termination for cause. Your legal defense will not be paid by this corporation. Marcus's face lost its color inch by inch. And, Adrian added, because several of your personal assets were pledged against those loans, liquidation proceedings will begin at dawn. Vanessa looked at Marcus. What loans? Marcus did not answer. That silence told her everything. You said the house was paid for, she whispered. Adrian's gaze flicked to her. The house in Westbridge was purchased through a leveraged executive facility, the penthouse as well, the cars, the yacht membership, several investment accounts used as collateral. Vanessa gripped Marcus's arm. Tell him he's lying. Marcus shook her off. The cruelty in that small gesture was familiar to Elena. She had once been the woman he discarded when the room became dangerous. Vanessa was learning faster. Board Chair Howard Ellison stepped forward, trembling with outrage and fear. Mr. Blackwood, I assure you, the board was not aware of the full extent. Adrian turned to him. Howard stopped speaking. The board will have its own review, Adrian said. Anyone who ignored warnings because profits looked convenient should not make plans beyond next quarter. Several board members looked down. The gala was no longer a celebration. It was an execution of illusions. Marcus lunged toward the podium. Security caught him before he reached the first step. You arrogant fraud, Marcus shouted. You dressed like trash and played games with people's lives. Adrian looked at him almost sadly. No, Marcus, you played games with people's lives. I changed the rules so you could not keep winning. Elena watched Marcus struggle between the guards, his perfect suit wrinkled, his silver tie crooked, his face twisted with disbelief. He was not sorry, that was the final grief. Even with proof surrounding him like walls, he seemed offended only by consequence. Vanessa began crying, but her tears were frantic, not remorseful. Elena, she said suddenly, turning toward her, please, you have to tell them this is too much. Elena stared at her. Only an hour ago, Vanessa had mocked her for not keeping her husband. Now she reached for mercy as though it were a service women owed each other after cruelty. I have to, Elena asked softly. Vanessa swallowed. You know Marcus manipulated things. He told me everything was legal. I didn't know how bad. The screen behind her changed again. An email appeared. From Vanessa Cross. To Marcus Vale. Subject, Calder problem. Ruth straightened. The message was short. If your ex-wife's lawyer keeps digging, we need to make Elena look unstable before the settlement hearing. I can leak enough to scare her quiet. The ballroom went colder. Elena read the words once. Then again. Marcus closed his eyes. Vanessa stepped back, as if the email had physically struck her. I was angry, she whispered. I didn't mean. You meant it, Elena said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried. You meant every word you said when you thought I was beneath you. You meant it when you sent funeral flowers to my apartment. You meant it when you stood in my home before I knew it had stopped being mine. You meant it when you laughed tonight. Vanessa's lips trembled. Elena continued, the only thing you didn't mean was to get caught. Silence followed. Adrian looked at Elena with something like respect, though he quickly looked away, allowing the moment to remain hers. The authorities arrived quietly. Not with sirens, not with spectacle, Men and women in dark suits entered through the side doors, accompanied by internal security and outside counsel. They spoke to Adrian first, then to Marcus and Vanessa. Guests watched, stunned, as Marcus Vale, the man who had toasted loyalty minutes earlier, was escorted from the ballroom. Vanessa tried to follow, then realized no one was waiting for her. Her powerful friends turned into statues. The executives who once praised her taste and influence suddenly found their phones fascinating. Her social circle evaporated in real time. She turned toward Elena again. "Elena, please," she said. Elena said nothing. It was not revenge that kept her silent. It was recognition. For years, she had mistaken mercy for letting people escape the truth. But mercy without accountability was just a softer name for permission. Vanessa was escorted out separately. The ballroom remained silent long after the doors closed behind them. Then someone began to clap. It was not one of the executives. It was the waiter Adrian had greeted by name. A second clap joined, then another. A woman from accounting stood, a maintenance supervisor near the back, a junior analyst with tears on his face, Ruth Calder, then dozens more. The applause did not belong to Adrian alone. It belonged to every quiet person who had seen cruelty rewarded and wondered whether the world had mistaken wealth for worth. Elena did not clap. She sat down because her knees had begun to shake. Adrian returned to the table after giving instructions to his legal team. For the first time all evening, he looked tired. "Elena," he said, "I'm sorry." She looked at him. For what? For the pain required to expose them. She smiled faintly. Pain was already there, at least tonight it served a purpose. His eyes held hers. Something passed between them, not romance, not yet, not anything so simple. It was the recognition of two people who had both learned that power reveals character, but so does powerlessness. By sunrise, the city knew. News outlets ran with the story before dawn. Blackwood Meridian's anniversary gala became the most watched corporate scandal of the year. Clips flooded every screen, Marcus at the podium praising integrity, the screen flickering, Adrian Blackwood removing his beggar's coat, Vanessa's face collapsing as evidence appeared behind her. Headlines burned across financial channels. Blackwood Air EXPOSES, executive fraud during anniversary gala. Marcus Vale, TR-4 cause, after live evidence reveal. Vanessa Cross, implicated in cover-up and misuse of charity funds. Hidden billionaire or trillionaire. Adrian Blackwood's secret investigation shocks global markets. Elena turned off the television after the fifth replay. She had not slept. She sat by her apartment window wrapped in a blanket, watching morning spread gold over buildings that looked innocent from far away. Her phone had hundreds of messages. Some from old friends apologizing. Some from reporters begging for comment. Some from unknown numbers offering book deals, interviews, sympathy, judgment. One message was from Marcus. "Elena, please answer. We need to talk." Then another. "You don't understand what Blackwood is doing. He'll destroy everything." Then another. "I know I hurt you, but you can't let them take the penthouse. That was our home." Elena almost laughed at that. Our home. He had filled it with lies, leveraged it for greed, carried Vanessa through its door, and now called it ours because loss had made him sentimental. She deleted nothing. Ruth had taught her that records mattered. At 8:30, someone knocked. Elena looked through the peephole and saw Adrian standing in the hallway. Not dressed as a beggar now, not as the untouchable owner from the gala either. He wore a dark coat, no tie, and carried 2 paper cups of coffee. She opened the door. "You look exhausted," she said. "So do you." "That's rude." "It's accurate." She stepped aside. "Come in." He entered her small apartment with a carefulness that surprised her, as though wealth had taught him how to own buildings, but grief had taught him not to dominate rooms. He placed one coffee on the table. "No mustard," he said. Despite everything, Elena smiled. "You remembered." "I remembered debts." She sat across from him. "Is it over?" Adrian's face answered before he did. "No, publicly, the fall happened last night. Legally, it begins now." "What happens to Marcus?" "Investigations, civil claims, possible criminal charges, asset freezes. He will fight, but his options are shrinking." "And Vanessa?" "The same, depending on cooperation and evidence." Elena nodded slowly. "And the employees he hurt?" Adrian looked down at his coffee. "That is why I came." She waited. "I'm establishing a restitution fund," he said, "for employees who were retaliated against, wrongfully terminated, or pressured into silence. Independent oversight, full review of past complaints, reinstatement offers where appropriate, financial compensation, public correction of records." Elena felt something inside her loosen. Not happiness. Something steadier. "That's good. I want you involved." She blinked. "Me?" "Yes." "Adrian, I'm not an executive." "No, that is one of your qualifications." "I don't work for Blackwood Meridian." "Another qualification." She stared at him. "You want your trillion-dollar company's restitution process guided by your disgraced executive's ex-wife. I want it guided by someone who knows what Marcus is, knows what silence costs, and still asked me whether people would be hurt." Elena had no answer. He leaned forward slightly. "I'm not offering charity, I'm offering authority, a paid role, independent ombud's office, your own legal staff, direct reporting line to me and the External Ethics Committee." The words felt too large for her apartment. Years ago, Marcus had told her she was better behind the scenes. He had said it kindly at first, then dismissively later, until Elena absorbed it as fact. She had become the invisible architecture of his success. Now Adrian was offering her a door with her name on it. "I need to think," she said. "Of course. Marcus will say, I planned this for money." Marcus will say anything that lets him remain the victim. That was true. Her phone buzzed again. "Marcus." Adrian glanced at it, but did not ask. Elena turned the phone face down. For a while, neither spoke. Rain began again, soft against the window. Elena remembered the first day she saw Adrian beneath the awning, pretending to be no one. She remembered the sandwich, the security guard, the way his hand had closed around the water bottle, as if kindness was something rare enough to handle carefully. "You could have exposed him without me," she said. "Yes. Why involve me?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment. "Because men like Marcus don't only steal money," he said. "They steal the story. They make themselves brilliant and everyone else unstable, jealous, weak, replaceable. Last night I could return the money. I could fire him. I could send evidence to authorities. But I could not return your name to you unless the same room that watched him humiliate you also watched the truth answer." Elena looked away quickly. Tears came without permission. Adrian did not move to comfort her. Somehow, that restraint made it easier to breathe. After a moment, she wiped her face. "Your father taught you that." "My mother," he said. Elena looked back. "I thought your father raised you." "He did, mostly. My mother died when I was young, but before she died, she told me something I did not understand until much later." "What?" Adrian's gaze settled on the rain. "Never let cruel people be the only ones who speak." The sentence stayed in the apartment long after he left. Marcus lasted 3 days before he came to Elena in person. He arrived at dusk wearing sunglasses, though the hallway was dim. His suit was not wrinkled, but it had lost its authority. His hair was slightly unkempt. He looked like a man who had spent too long shouting into phones that no longer answered. Elena opened the door only because Ruth was on speaker in her pocket, silently listening. "Elena," Marcus said. "No." His face twitched. "You don't even know what I'm going to say." "I know every version." He removed the sunglasses. His eyes were red, not from tears perhaps, but from sleeplessness and rage. "They froze everything," he said. "My accounts, the company loans, the board cut me loose. My attorneys want retainers I can't access. Vanessa is talking to investigators. She's trying to put it all on me." Elena said nothing. Marcus looked past her into the apartment. Once, he would have mocked it. Now he seemed to measure whether desperation could fit inside. "I made mistakes," he said. The phrase was so small compared to the damage that Elena almost closed the door. "Mistakes are missed appointments," she said. "Wrong turns, forgotten birthdays. You built systems to hurt people." "I was under pressure." "So was I. I lost myself." "No, Marcus, you found what you wanted and stopped hiding it." His mouth tightened. There he was, the real Marcus, waiting beneath the apology like a fist inside a glove. "You think Blackwood cares about you," he snapped. "You're useful to him, that's all. He made you part of his little theater." Elena felt the old instinct to defend, explain, soften. It rose, then died. "Maybe," she said. Marcus blinked. "But he told the truth in the theater. You lied in our home." The words struck him harder than anger would have. For the first time, Marcus looked not triumphant, not furious, but small. "I need you to sign a statement," he said. There it was. Elena almost smiled. "What kind of statement?" "That you were emotionally distressed after the divorce, that Blackwood manipulated you, that you don't believe I intentionally committed fraud. Do you hear yourself?" "Elena, please." His voice cracked then, but she no longer trusted cracks. Even broken glass could cut. "They're going to ruin me." She looked at the man she had loved for 10 years. She searched for the young husband from the laundromat apartment, the one who had promised everyone would know she believed in him first. For years, she had imagined him trapped somewhere beneath ambition, waiting to be rescued. But there was no trapped man. There was only Marcus, asking the woman he betrayed to become the final tool in his escape. "You ruined yourself," she said. His eyes hardened. "After everything we had." "No, Marcus, after everything I gave." She closed the door. He shouted her name once. Then again. Then the hallway went quiet. Ruth's voice came softly through the phone in Elena's pocket. "Well," the lawyer said, "that was satisfying and legally useful." Elena laughed until she cried. 2 weeks later, Blackwood Meridian announced the creation of the Alastair Blackwood Office for Ethical Restoration. Elena Vale was named its founding director. The news caused another wave of commentary. Some praised the appointment as poetic justice, others called it scandalous. A few business hosts questioned whether an ex-wife could be objective. Ruth appeared on one program and politely dismantled that argument so thoroughly the clip went viral. Elena Vale was objective enough to remain silent for years, while powerful people dismissed her, Ruth said. Perhaps the better question is why so many supposedly objective executives failed to notice fraud happening under chandeliers. Elena did not watch most of it. She was too busy working. The office began in a temporary suite on the 23rd floor, far below the executive levels Marcus once haunted. Elena chose that floor deliberately. It housed payroll, employee relations, and facilities management, the departments that knew how a company actually survived. On her first day, she found a line of people waiting outside before the doors officially opened. A former analyst who had been demoted after questioning vendor projections. A security supervisor pressured to alter visitor logs. A nurse from the delayed hospital wing, whose department had suffered after funds vanished. A junior assistant, Vanessa, had humiliated in meetings until she quit. A widower whose wife, a procurement auditor, had died before her concerns were reviewed properly. Elena listened to every one of them. Not perfectly, not without becoming overwhelmed. Some stories followed her home. Some nights she dreamed of spreadsheets turning into locked doors. Some mornings she woke with Marcus's voice in her head telling her she was not qualified. But then she would remember Adrian's mother's words. Never let cruel people be the only ones who speak. So Elena kept opening doors. Adrian visited rarely and never without asking. When he did not sit at the head of the conference table unless invited. Employees were nervous around him at first. How could they not be? He was a man whose wealth could rearrange markets before lunch. But he remembered names, asked precise questions, and once spent 30 minutes speaking with a janitor about supply closet safety because the man had mentioned faulty shelving. Elena watched him from across the room and understood why his disguise had worked. He had not been pretending to see invisible people. He had trained himself never to stop. One evening, nearly a month after the gala, Elena found Adrian alone in the archive room, standing before a wall of old company photographs. Alistair Blackwood appeared in many of them, cutting ribbons, shaking hands, touring factories, standing beside employees whose uniforms were stained from real work. In one photograph, a young Adrian stood beside him, unsmiling, holding a broom almost taller than himself. Elena leaned against the doorway, punishment for another broken window. Adrian glanced back. Worse, I called a maintenance worker just a cleaner. Ouch. My father made me shadow the cleaning crew for a week. Effective. I never said it again. Elena walked closer. Do you miss him? Adrian looked at the photograph. Every day, Maury, when I find what people did to his company after he was gone. He'd be proud of what you're doing. I hope so. He would also probably tell you to sleep. That earned a small smile. Elena Vale, he said, defender of sandwiches and sleep. Someone has to protect the basics. A comfortable silence settled between them. Then Adrian said, Marcus filed an emergency petition this morning. Elena's smile faded. What does he want? To block asset liquidation. To claim the evidence was obtained through entrapment and reputational sabotage. Can he win? No. The certainty in his voice should have comforted her. Instead, it reminded her that Marcus was cornered, and cornered men often reached for whatever could still break. He'll come after me again, she said. He may try. I'm not afraid of him. I know. She looked at Adrian. Do you? Yes. The simplicity of his answer unsettled her more than flattery would have. Adrian continued, fear is not the same as obedience. You may be afraid, but you do not obey him anymore. Elena held his gaze. Some truths arrive gently and still change the shape of the room. No, she said, I don't. Marcus's final collapse came not in a courtroom, but in a bank conference room with beige walls and no sympathy. The liquidation proceedings moved faster than he expected. Without company protection, without access to frozen accounts, without friends willing to risk Adrian Blackwood's attention, Marcus discovered that wealth built on leverage was just poverty wearing a rented suit. The penthouse went first. Then the cars. Then the Westbridge house Vanessa had believed would be hers. Then the investment accounts tied to shell company transfers. His name, once spoken with admiration in corporate elevators, became a cautionary whisper. Invitations disappeared. Calls went unanswered. Former allies issued statements about being deeply troubled. The same social world that had celebrated his rise now treated him like a stain no one wanted on their sleeve. Vanessa tried to save herself by cooperating. It helped less than she hoped. Investigators had her emails, recordings, payments, and testimony from employees she had threatened. Her glamorous image fractured under the weight of documented cruelty. Sponsors dropped her charity partnerships. Magazines deleted old features. The luxury apartment she had moved into after Marcus promised her a future became unaffordable within weeks. One rainy afternoon, Elena found Vanessa waiting outside the office for ethical restoration. For a moment, neither spoke. Vanessa looked different without the armor of styling. Still beautiful, but thinner, pale, nervous. Her designer coat was belted too tightly. Her hands gripped a folder. "Elena," she said. The receptionist looked alarmed, but Elena nodded that it was all right. They stepped into a small meeting room with glass walls. Vanessa sat down, then stood, then sat again. "I don't know where else to go," she said. Elena remained standing. "Why are you here?" "I need a letter." "No. You don't even know what kind." "I know enough." Vanessa's face tightened. "I'm not asking you to lie, just to say I wasn't the main person responsible, that Marcus pressured me, that I cooperated." "Did he pressure you to send funeral flowers?" Vanessa looked down. "Did he pressure you to mock me at the gala?" "Elena, did he pressure you to write that email about making me look unstable?" Vanessa's eyes filled. "I was trying to survive." "So was everyone you stepped on." The words landed between them. Vanessa wiped her cheek angrily, as if offended by her own tears. "You think I was born like this?" she said suddenly. Elena said nothing. Vanessa laughed bitterly. "My mother cleaned houses for women who called her sweetheart because they couldn't remember her name. I promised myself I'd never be invisible like that. I learned early that pretty opens doors, but power keeps them open." Marcus offered power. For the first time, Elena saw not an excuse, but a route. It did not absolve Vanessa, but it explained the hunger. "I thought if I became the woman men chose," Vanessa whispered, "I'd never be the woman they discarded." Elena felt an old ache twist inside her. "And then Marcus discarded you anyway." Vanessa closed her eyes. "Yes." For a moment, the room held two women harmed by the same man in different ways, though one had helped sharpen the weapon used against the other. Vanessa opened the folder and slid a document across the table. "I wrote everything down," she said. "Names, dates, accounts Marcus mentioned, people he paid, people he threatened. I don't expect you to help me, but maybe this helps the others." Elena looked at the folder. Then at Vanessa. "Why bring it to me?" "Because no one else will believe I'm doing one decent thing unless you saw it happen." That was probably true. Elena took the folder. "I won't write you a letter." Vanessa nodded, tears falling silently now. "But I will make sure this reaches the investigators." "Thank you." "Elena," Vanessa said as she reached the door. Elena paused. "I'm sorry." There were many ways to say sorry. Some were keys, some were costumes. This one sounded small, ashamed, and late. Elena did not forgive her. Not then. Maybe not ever. But she nodded once. Vanessa left. That evening, Elena placed the folder on Adrian's desk. He read the first 3 pages in silence. "This is valuable," he said. "She wants mercy." "Do you?" Elena looked toward the window, where the city burned gold under sunset. "I want truth to matter more than punishment." Adrian considered that. "Then we use the truth properly." The legal storm continued for months. Marcus fought, accused, appealed, raged, and finally began losing in every direction. The more he tried to blame others, the more evidence surfaced. Vanessa's folder opened new trails. Former employees came forward. Shell companies unraveled. Hidden accounts were traced. The hospital fund was restored with interest. Retaliated workers received settlements and public apologies. Several executives resigned. 2 board members were removed. Howard Ellison retired for health reasons, though everyone understood the illness was exposure. Marcus's bankruptcy filing became public in late autumn. Elena read the notice at her desk. She expected satisfaction. Instead, she felt a strange quiet. Bankrupt. The word looked dramatic in headlines, but on paper it was just administrative. A final accounting of collapse, assets, liabilities, claims, losses, numbers replacing ego. Ruth called within minutes. Have you seen? Yes. How do you feel? Elena leaned back in her chair. Through the glass wall, she could see employees moving through the office Adrian had funded and she had shaped. People once silenced now sat with lawyers, advocates, auditors. Their stories had become records. Their records had become action. I feel, Elena said slowly, like a door closed. Good door or bad door? Locked from my side. Ruth laughed softly. That's my girl. That night, Elena returned home late. A black envelope waited under her door. For a second, her heart stopped. Then she picked it up and saw her name written in familiar dark ink. Elena Vale. Inside was a single photograph. Not of Marcus. Not of Vanessa. Of Elena herself at the gala, standing in her simple black dress while the room turned toward her after Adrian revealed Marcus had stolen her work. Her face in the photograph was calm, but her eyes were bright with something fierce and newly born. Behind the photograph was a note. Some people do not rise because they are lifted. They rise because the weight is finally removed. No signature. Elena smiled. The next morning, she found Adrian on the roof garden of Blackwood Meridian headquarters. The garden had been Alastair's idea, Adrian told her once, a place where employees could eat lunch beneath trees instead of fluorescent lights. For years, executives had reserved it for private events. Elena had quietly changed the policy during her first month as director. Now anyone with a badge could enter. Adrian stood near the edge, looking across the city. Elena held up the envelope. You have a dramatic stationery habit. He glanced at it. I've been told subtlety is not my greatest strength. You sent the first one too. Yes. And the gala invitation note. Yes. And the flowers Marcus didn't send during our marriage. Adrian turned, startled. Elena burst out laughing. I'm kidding. A rare full smile crossed his face, and for a moment he looked younger than his empire. She joined him at the railing. Below them the city moved on, indifferent and alive. Cars flashed between buildings. People hurried under umbrellas. Somewhere far beneath, a man might be stepping over someone he thought did not matter. Somewhere else, a woman might be offering food without knowing she was changing the direction of a life. Marcus filed bankruptcy, Elena said. I know. Of course you do. He also requested a settlement meeting. With you. With you. Elena looked at him sharply. Why? Because he believes you can influence restitution claims, civil cooperation terms, and perhaps me. She laughed once, still overestimating his importance. Or underestimating yours. Elena grew quiet. The wind moved through the rooftop trees. Will you attend? Adrian asked. Yes. He studied her. You don't have to. I know. Then why? Elena looked over the city. Because once he laughed in my face while I signed away a life I helped build. I want him to see the woman who walks into that room now. The meeting took place in a neutral legal office with grey walls and a long table. Marcus arrived with 2 attorneys and no confidence. He had aged in months. His hair had grayed at the temples. The perfect tan was gone. His suit was expensive but not new. Without title, wealth, or admirers, Marcus seemed unfinished, like a statue removed from its pedestal and revealed to be hollow in the back. Elena arrived with Ruth. Adrian did not attend. That mattered. Marcus had expected him. He had prepared, perhaps, to rage against the billionaire who destroyed him. Instead, he had to face Elena without the distraction of another man's power. He looked at her as she sat across from him. "Elena," he said. "Marcus." The attorneys began, but Marcus interrupted. "I want to speak to my ex-wife alone." "No," Ruth said instantly. Elena raised a hand. "It's fine, you stay," he speaks. Marcus swallowed. The old irritation flashed, but he controlled it. "I know you hate me," he said. "I don't." That surprised him. "You should," he said. "Yes." His mouth tightened. There had been a time when Elena would have rushed to comfort him for sounding wounded by his own guilt. She would have told him hate was too strong a word. She would have softened the room. Now she waited. Marcus looked down at his hands. "I lost everything." Elena said nothing. "The penthouse, the Westbridge house, my accounts, my position, Vanessa turned on me, the board abandoned me, my name is poison." He gave a short, bitter laugh. "People I made rich won't take my calls." "That must be painful." His eyes lifted quickly, searching for sarcasm. There was none. That seemed to unsettle him more. "I need help," he said. "What kind?" "I need you not to oppose a reduced civil settlement. I need room to rebuild. I need—" He stopped, pride fighting desperation. "I need mercy." There it was again. Mercy. People who had never practiced it were always shocked to discover it was not a button they could press in others. Elena looked at him for a long moment. "Do you remember our first apartment?" she asked. Marcus blinked. "What?" Above the laundromat, the floor shook when the machines ran. Confusion crossed his face. "Yes. You used to hate that place." "So did you." "No, I loved parts of it." He frowned. "You came home once after your manager rejected your proposal. You said you were nothing. You said men like you never get noticed unless someone already powerful opens the door." Elena's voice stayed even. "I stayed up all night helping you rewrite it. You got promoted. You never told them I helped." Marcus looked away. "I told myself it didn't matter," she continued. "Then it happened again and again. My ideas became yours. My patience became your entitlement. My loyalty became your disguise." "Elena." "No, you asked for mercy. You can listen first." His mouth closed. "For years, I thought the worst thing you did was stop loving me. It was. The worst thing you did was teach me to doubt the value of everything I gave. You made me feel foolish for believing in you, for sacrificing, for staying kind." Her eyes held his. "But I was not foolish. I was faithful to someone who was false. That is not my shame." Marcus's face crumpled, but Elena no longer needed to know whether it was real. "I'm sorry," he whispered. The words did not heal the past. But they did mark its grave. "I believe you are sorry you lost everything," Elena said. "I don't know if you are sorry you took it." He flinched. "The settlement will not be reduced because you are uncomfortable with consequence, but I will not ask for cruelty beyond justice. The restitution process will remain fair, even to you." Marcus stared at her. That was the mercy, not rescue. Vanessa. He had never looked smaller. As Elena stood to leave, Marcus said, "Did you love him?" She paused. Ruth's eyebrows rose. Elena turned back. "Who?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "Blackwood." The question was absurd, jealous, and human in the saddest way. Elena looked at the man who had traded her devotion for vanity and now wondered if another man's power had replaced his. "No," she said, "at least not in the way you mean." Marcus looked relieved for half a second. Then Elena added, "But he respected me before you remembered how." She left him there. Winter came early that year. Snow touched the city in thin white lines, softening rooftops and hiding dirt without removing it. Blackwood Meridian changed slowly, painfully, publicly. The company paid fines. It replaced leadership. It issued apologies that Elena personally rewrote until they stopped sounding like legal fog and started sounding like human responsibility. Some employees remained skeptical. Elena did not blame them. Trust, once broken, did not return because powerful people announced a new initiative. It returned in small payments. A complaint answered, a manager removed, a policy enforced, a janitor greeted by name, a junior analyst allowed to challenge a number without fear. Adrian gave fewer speeches after the gala, but when he did, people listened differently, not because he was rich, because they had seen him stand in torn clothes while others revealed who they were. One evening, Elena stayed late reviewing a restitution case involving the widow of the procurement auditor who had died. The evidence did not prove foul play in the accident, but it did prove her concerns had been dismissed before her death and mocked afterward. Elena authorized compensation and a public correction to the woman's personnel file. She sat alone afterward, exhausted. Adrian knocked on the open door. "You missed dinner," he said. "So did you." "I had coffee." "That is not dinner." "Neither is righteous anger, but you've been living on it for months." She gave him a tired look. "Did you come here to be annoying?" "Yes." He placed a paper bag on her desk. Soup, bread, no mustard. Elena smiled, despite herself. He sat in the chair across from her desk, not speaking while she ate. They had developed that habit, silence without demand. For Elena, it felt like luxury. After a while, she said, "Do you ever get tired of carrying your father's ghost?" Adrian looked at her. The question would have been too personal months ago. Now it was simply honest. "Yes," he said, "but I'm more afraid of putting it down." "Why?" "Because what if I become less good without the weight of him watching?" Elena set down her spoon. Goodness that only exists under supervision isn't goodness, it's performance. Adrian looked toward the dark window, where their reflections hovered over the city lights. "My father would have liked you," he said. "Because I lecture billionaires. Especially because of that." She laughed softly. Then he reached into his coat and placed something on her desk. A small velvet box. Elena froze. Adrian noticed and immediately raised both hands. "Not that kind of box." She exhaled. "That was almost your first stupid decision." "Noted." Inside was a pin, a silver leaf, shaped almost exactly like the hairpin Elena had worn to the gala. At its center was a tiny black raven holding a key. "My father gave pins to people who changed the company without needing permission," Adrian said. "There are only 12. I had this one made from the last unused design he approved." Elena touched it gently. "I don't know what to say." "Say nothing, if you like. You're excellent at making silence meaningful." She looked up, smiling. The moment stretched. Not dramatic, not thunderous, just warm. For the first time in a long time, Elena felt the future enter the room without frightening her. 1 year after the gala, Blackwood Meridian held another anniversary event. This one was smaller. No crystal spectacle, no self-congratulatory videos, no executives praising integrity while hiding theft behind the curtains. It took place in the headquarters atrium, open to employees from every department. The catering came from local businesses. The front rows were reserved for workers who had served the company longest, not those with the highest titles. Elena stood backstage, holding note cards she did not need. Adrian approached, wearing a simple black suit and the raven key pin. "No beggar costume?" she asked. "Retired." Pity it was memorable. So was being insulted by half my leadership team. Good point. He looked at her with quiet pride. Ready. Elena looked through the curtain. In the audience she saw Ruth, the waiter who had started the applause, the security guard who had once been ordered to remove Adrian and had since apologized with visible shame, the widow of the procurement auditor, the junior assistant Vanessa had bullied, now rehired in a better position, employees from payroll, facilities, compliance, finance, engineering, legal, and reception. People who made the tower stand. She also saw an empty space where Marcus might once have stood, smiling for cameras, stealing light. The absence did not hurt. That was how she knew she was free. Elena stepped onto the stage. Applause rose, not explosive, not theatrical, but real. She waited for it to fade. A year ago, she began, many people learned what happens when cruelty becomes confident because it thinks no one important is watching. Faces turned toward her. But the lesson of that night was not that powerful people should fear being secretly observed. Fear is a weak foundation for integrity. The lesson is that no person should have to be powerful to be protected. No one should need a hidden billionaire in the room to be treated with dignity. Adrian watched from the side, his expression unreadable except to Elena, who now knew the small signs. She continued. This company was not saved by one reveal at one gala. It is being rebuilt by every person who tells the truth, every person who listens, every person who refuses to laugh when someone else is being humiliated, and every person who understands that silence can either shelter cruelty or protect courage. Her voice strengthened. I was once mocked in this company's ballroom for standing beside a man people believed was poor. That moment exposed more than fraud. It exposed a sickness older than any balance sheet, the belief that wealth determines worth. The atrium was utterly still. Elena Vale, Marcus had once said, laughing outside the courthouse, "You'll be fine, you're resilient." He had meant she could be hurt without consequence. Now she understood resilience differently. It was not the ability to endure endless pain. It was the decision to stop calling endurance love. She looked out at the employees. We do not rebuild by pretending harm did not happen. We rebuild by making sure the truth has somewhere to go. The applause came slowly at first. Then it filled the atrium. Elena stepped back from the podium, and Adrian met her at the edge of the stage. "Well," she asked. His eyes were bright. "My father would have stolen that speech and claimed it as his own." She laughed. "Absolutely not." "No," Adrian said softly, "absolutely not." Later that night, after the atrium emptied and the city settled into rain again, Elena walked alone through the lobby. The silver Blackwood Meridian crest shone on the wall, the raven holding the key. For years she had thought keys belonged to people like Marcus, men with offices, titles, money, voices that filled rooms. Now she knew better. A key could be a sandwich offered in the rain. A file kept instead of destroyed. A woman refusing to sign one more lie. A room forced to watch the truth arrive wearing torn clothes. As Elena reached the glass doors, she saw Adrian waiting outside beneath the awning, holding an umbrella. Not because she needed rescuing. Because he knew she hated walking in rain without one. She stepped outside. He opened the umbrella over both of them. For a moment, they stood where it had all truly begun, at the edge of a building that had mistaken status for soul. "Do you ever think about that day?" Adrian asked. "The sandwich?" "Yes, all the time." "So do I." Rain tapped above them. Elena looked at him. "You know, if I had known who you were, I might have offered something better." Adrian smiled. "That is exactly why it mattered." They walked down the steps together, not as savior and saved, not as billionaire and broken woman, not as scandal and headline. Just two people who had seen each other clearly when masks were everywhere. Across the street, a man in a worn coat sat beneath a bus shelter, shivering slightly. People passed him quickly, collars raised against the rain. Elena stopped. Adrian stopped too. She opened her bag, took out the untouched bread from dinner, and walked over. "Excuse me," she said gently, "have you eaten?" The man looked up, surprised. Adrian watched from beneath the umbrella. And somewhere in the city, Marcus Vale sat in a rented room, surrounded by legal notices, finally understanding what Elena had known long before him. The world does not collapse when a cruel man falls. Sometimes that is when the world begins correcting its balance. Vanessa Cross, working under cooperation agreement and stripped of every glamorous illusion she once worshipped, would later testify in proceedings that helped expose 3 more executives. She would not become a hero. Elena would not allow history to become that lazy, but Vanessa would become proof that even people who served cruelty could one day choose truth, though choosing it late did not erase the damage done early. Marcus would spend years trying to rebuild a name no one wanted to hold. He would write letters Elena never answered, some angry, some pleading. One, years later, almost honest. In it, he admitted that the first thing he ever stole was not company money, but credit that belonged to his wife. Elena kept that letter in a file. Not because she needed it. Because records mattered. The Office for Ethical Restoration became permanent. Other corporations studied it. Journalists requested interviews. Universities invited Elena to speak on accountability and corporate silence. She accepted some, declined most, and always returned to the 23rd floor, where truth still arrived carrying old pain in trembling hands. Adrian remained powerful, but less mythical. The world had finally seen his face. He still avoided celebrity, still entered through service doors when possible, still knew the names of people others ignored. Sometimes, when executives became too impressed with themselves, he would appear in an old coat at a regional office and sit quietly in the lobby. The story spread inside Blackwood Meridian until it became almost legend. Be careful how you treat the man by the door. Be careful what you laugh at. Be careful whose silence you mistake for defeat. But Elena disliked that version. It's not about being careful, she told a group of new managers one spring afternoon. Careful is what people become when they fear punishment. Be decent. Decency works even when no one important is watching. After the session, she returned to her office and found a sandwich on her desk. Turkey, no mustard. Beside it lay a note in Adrian's handwriting. A debt renewed. Elena smiled, pinned the silver leaf to her jacket, and looked out over the city. Once she had been a woman laughed at in a courthouse, replaced in her marriage, mocked in a ballroom, and expected to disappear quietly so powerful people could keep their stories clean. Now her name opened doors. Not because Adrian Blackwood had given her power. Because he had revealed what Marcus spent years trying to hide. Elena had always had it. Quietly. Dangerously, unforgettably. And when the next frightened employee stepped into her office clutching a folder, Elena rose, offered a chair, and said the words she wished someone had said to her long ago. Take your time, I'm listening. The employee who stepped into Elena's office that morning was barely 24. Her name was Maya Chen, a data compliance analyst from the Singapore branch, and she held her folder the way people held evidence when they were terrified it might burn through their hands. Her eyes moved first to the door, then to the glass wall, then to Elena's face. Mrs. Vale, she whispered. Elena corrected gently, please. Maya swallowed, I was told you listen. Elena closed the file on her desk. Outside her office, the 23rd floor hummed with the ordinary sounds of a company trying to become better than its history. Phones ringing, keyboards tapping, low conversations, printers waking and sleeping. But inside the room, the air changed. Elena had learned to recognize that change. It came whenever someone carried a truth heavy enough to alter lives. "I do," Elena said. "Sit down." Maya did not sit right away. She looked at the folder again. "If I give this to you," she said, "people above me will know it was me. Not unless you choose to be named. They always find out." Elena heard the old lesson in that sentence, not paranoia, experience. She remembered herself standing in Marcus's marble kitchen, asking one simple question and being made to feel unstable for noticing the obvious. She remembered the black envelope, the photograph, the note. Some masks fall only when the room is full. Now another mask had arrived. Elena pushed a glass of water across the desk. "Maya," she said, "before you tell me anything, I want you to know this. You are not here to save the company. The company has lawyers, money, investigators, and Adrian Blackwood. Your job is to tell the truth safely. My job is to make sure the company does not punish you for it." Maya's lips trembled. Then she sat. The folder opened. Inside were printed emails, server logs, transaction trails, and photographs of shipping records. Elena knew enough by now to understand what she was seeing before Maya explained it, and that knowledge made the room colder. Blackwood Meridian's global restructuring after Marcus's downfall had exposed rot in North America. But rot, Elena had learned, rarely respected borders. It spread through systems, through people, through favors owed and secrets kept. Maya pointed to a sequence of invoices. "These are humanitarian supply shipments," she said. "Medical equipment, water filtration units, emergency power cells. They were supposed to go to flood zones in Southeast Asia after the typhoons last year." Elena's eyes moved down the page. The numbers were enormous. "The shipments were marked delivered," Maya continued, "but local receiving partners say they only got part of them, sometimes half, sometimes less. Where did the rest go?" Maya's voice dropped. "Private resellers, shadow distributors, some tied to government officials, some tied to Blackwood subsidiaries." Elena went still. "Which subsidiaries?" Maya hesitated. Then she slid one page forward. The name at the top struck Elena like a hand against glass. Vale Strategic Consulting. For a moment, the office disappeared. Marcus had started that firm quietly after the divorce proceedings began. At the time, Elena thought it was just another shelter for hidden assets, one more polished drawer where he stored money he did not want her to touch. After the gala, the firm had supposedly collapsed under investigation. But here it was. Not dead. Repurposed. Maya watched Elena's face. "You recognize it?" "Yes," Elena said softly, "I recognize it. There's more. There always was." Maya removed a photograph from the folder and placed it on the desk. It showed Marcus. Not the ruined Marcus from the settlement room, not the trembling man begging for mercy. This Marcus stood in a private airport lounge, thinner and older, but unmistakable, speaking to a broad-shouldered man in a charcoal suit. Beside them stood a woman wearing sunglasses, her blonde hair tucked beneath a silk scarf. Elena stared at her. "Vanessa!" A slow, bitter understanding unfolded in Elena's chest. Vanessa had cooperated. Vanessa had testified. Vanessa had seemed broken, ashamed, stripped of power. But people who lived by performance did not always stop performing when the curtain fell. "Where was this taken?" Elena asked. "Dubai 3 weeks ago." Elena looked up. Maya nodded. "I know." 3 weeks ago, Vanessa had sent Elena a handwritten note. "Thank you for ensuring my testimony was handled fairly. I am trying to become someone who deserves the chance I was given." Elena had almost believed it. Not fully, but enough to let the letter sit in her desk instead of the evidence archive. Now the words turned to ash in memory. "Who else has seen this?" Elena asked. "My direct supervisor. He told me to delete the discrepancies and stop digging. Did you? Maya shook her head. Good. He was found dead yesterday. Elena's hand stilled over the page. Maya's voice became almost soundless. They said heart attack. He was 38. The glass walls of Elena's office suddenly felt too transparent. Outside, someone laughed softly near the printer. A coffee machine hissed. The world continued its small routines while a dead man's warning opened like a trap on Elena's desk. She pressed the intercom. Ruth, she said, come to my office, now. Then she picked up her phone and called Adrian. He answered on the second ring. Elena. She looked at Maya's folder, at Marcus's company name, at Vanessa's hidden face in the airport photograph. The room wasn't full enough, Elena said. On the other end, Adrian went silent. Then his voice changed. Not louder. Colder. I'm coming. By noon, the 23rd floor had been sealed. Not publicly, not dramatically. Adrian had learned from the gala that spectacle was useful only when the truth was ready to survive daylight. This was not spectacle yet. This was containment. Ruth arrived first, reading while walking, her face tightening page by page. Then came two external investigators, a forensic accountant, and a former federal prosecutor Adrian had hired after the Marcus scandal to oversee cross-border misconduct reviews. Adrian entered last. People always expected power to arrive loudly. Adrian arrived quietly, and that made him more frightening. He wore a charcoal coat still dusted with rain, his hair slightly damp, his expression unreadable. He looked first at Maya, not at the documents. Are you safe? He asked. Maya blinked, as if it was the wrong question. I think so. That isn't enough. Adrian turned to Ruth. Secure housing, independent counsel, digital protection, today. Ruth nodded, already started. Only then did Adrian look at the folder. Elena watched his face as he read. She had seen him furious at the gala, though fury on Adrian Blackwood did not look like fire. It looked like winter taking human form. This was different. This was older, deeper. This was betrayal reaching into the work he thought they had already cleansed. When he reached the photograph of Marcus and Vanessa, his eyes lifted to Elena. I'm sorry, he said. She almost smiled at the familiar words. For what? For believing finished meant finished. Elena looked back at the photograph. So did I. Ruth placed both hands on the desk. Let's not jump ahead. This could be an old network using an old shell. The photo proves contact, not control. Maya spoke carefully. There's a voice recording too. Everyone turned. Maya removed a small drive from her pocket. My supervisor gave it to me before he died. He said if anything happened, I should bring it to someone outside the chain. I didn't know who, then I remembered your speech. Elena felt the words land with quiet force. No one should need a hidden billionaire in the room to be treated with dignity. She had said that from a stage. Now someone had believed her enough to risk everything. Adrian inserted the drive into an isolated laptop brought by the forensic team. The audio file opened. Static. Then voices. Marcus first. I don't care what Blackwood thinks he froze. People like him own buildings. People like me understand exits. A second voice answered, deep and accented. Your name is toxic. My name is useful in places where scandal looks like experience. Then Vanessa. Elena is the problem. She made herself symbolic. As long as she runs that office, employees will keep talking. Elena felt every eye shift toward her. Vanessa's voice continued, smooth and cold. Symbols can be broken, or corrupted, or made tragic. Adrian's hand closed slowly. The audio continued. Marcus laughed. Don't underestimate her. I did that once. Vanessa replied, "No, Marcus, you underestimated who was watching. This time we make sure no one is." The recording ended. For several seconds, no one spoke. Maya's face had gone pale. Ruth was the first to break the silence. "That is a threat." Adrian looked at the investigators. "Treat it as one." Elena sat very still. A year ago, Marcus had laughed in her face because he believed she was disposable. Then he had begged because he believed she was useful. Now, somewhere beyond the reach of his former empire, he had learned to fear what she represented. Not Elena, the wife. Not Elena, the ex-wife. Elena, the witness. Elena, the door through which others walked. Adrian turned to her. "You need protection." "No." His jaw tightened. "Elena." "No," she repeated, standing. "I need strategy. Protection is part of it, yes. But if I disappear behind guards and tinted glass, what happens to Maya? What happens to everyone else watching to see whether this office can survive its first real threat?" Ruth sighed. "I hate when you're right in a way that gives me a headache." Adrian did not smile. "Elena, this is not Marcus humiliating you in a ballroom." "No," she said, "it's worse, because now he knows exactly what truth can cost him." Adrian stepped closer, lowering his voice. "And now he knows exactly where to aim." The words should have frightened her. They did. But fear, Elena had learned, was only information. It told you where the danger stood. It did not get to decide where you stood. She looked at Maya. The young analyst was watching her with wide, frightened eyes. Elena remembered what it felt like to look for courage in someone else's face. So she gave Maya the truth without decoration. "I'm scared," Elena said. Maya blinked. "But I am not leaving." Something in Maya's shoulders loosened. Adrian saw it too. Elena knew he did, because his anger shifted into something more disciplined. "Then we move carefully," he said. "No public accusations until we can prove the full chain. We secure Maya. We investigate the supervisor's death independently. We trace Vale's strategic consulting through every jurisdiction it touched." "And Vanessa?" Ruth asked. Adrian's eyes hardened. "We find out whether her apology was real for a while or never real at all." Elena picked up the airport photograph. Vanessa's face was half hidden by sunglasses, but Elena could still see the tilt of her mouth. Confident, careful, familiar. "She wanted to stop being invisible," Elena said quietly. Ruth looked at her. "What?" Elena remembered Vanessa in the glass meeting room, confessing that her mother had cleaned houses for women who forgot her name. She remembered almost pitying her. Almost. "Nothing," Elena said. But it was not nothing. It was motive. The next 48 hours unfolded like a storm behind locked doors. Maya was moved to a secure apartment under a different name. Her devices were cloned, examined, and replaced. Her supervisor's death was reopened through private investigators, while Ruth quietly pushed for official review. The forensic team traced shipping invoices across 5 countries, through charities, distributors, shell buyers, and consulting agreements written in language so clean it practically screamed guilt. Vale's strategic consulting had not survived by accident. Someone had purchased its dormant structure during bankruptcy proceedings through an offshore entity, then used it as a ghost vessel to move contracts that looked unrelated to Marcus. The buyer's identity was hidden behind layers of trustees, but one name surfaced repeatedly in private meeting schedules. Lucian Armand. Adrian recognized the name immediately. "Former Blackwood expansion advisor," he said, looking at the report in Elena's office. "My father fired him 16 years ago." "For what?" Elena asked. "Selling influence, manipulating relief contracts after a hurricane. My father could never prove enough for prison, but he burned him out of every respectable room he could reach." Ruth leaned back. So Marcus found another bitter man with a grudge against the Blackwoods. Or Armand found Marcus, Adrian said. Elena looked at the name. Lucian Armand. Even on paper, it felt theatrical. Dangerous people often did. They knew the power of sounding inevitable. Where is he now? She asked. Monaco, Adrian said. Sometimes Dubai, sometimes Geneva, wherever law has a beautiful view. And Vanessa? The investigator answered. She entered Dubai under her own passport, stayed 2 nights, then flew to Athens. Elena's attention sharpened. Athens? Yes. Is she still there? Unknowns. Adrian looked at Elena. Something unspoken moved between them. The world was large, but danger had a strange way of coming closer, once named. That evening, Elena returned home with 2 security officers following at a respectful distance. She hated it, she understood it, she hated that she understood it. Her apartment felt different now. Before, it had been modest and honest, a place where nothing pretended to love her. Now every window looked like a question, every shadow seemed too patient. On her kitchen table sat the old box of memories, wedding photographs, birthday cards, the first black envelope, Marcus's later letter, Vanessa's apology note. She had taken it out days earlier while organizing documents for a university talk on coercive silence. Now she opened it. Marcus smiled from old photographs with the bright hunger of a man not yet powerful enough to be cruel openly. In one picture, Elena stood beside him outside the laundromat apartment, holding a cheap cake with 1 candle because they could not afford more. She looked young, soft, certain. She touched the edge of the photo. I'm sorry, she whispered to that younger self. Not for loving him. For believing love required disappearance. At the bottom of the box lay Vanessa's note. Thank you for ensuring my testimony was handled fairly. I am trying to become someone who deserves the chance I was given. Elena read it again. This time she noticed something. The handwriting. The V in Vanessa had a sharp downward stroke. The same sharpness appeared in the first black envelope. No, that had been Adrian's writing, dark and controlled. But this note's paper carried a faint scent. Lilies. Funeral flowers. Elena went cold. She lifted the note closer. Pressed into the paper, barely visible under the lamp, was an indentation from a page written above it. She took a pencil from the drawer and shaded lightly over the blank back of the note. Words emerged. Not complete, but enough. A name. A veil. A date. And 1 phrase. Make her run toward the truth. Elena stopped breathing. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She should have ignored it. Instead, she answered. For a moment, there was only static. Then Vanessa's voice whispered, Elena. Elena's grip tightened. Where are you? A shaky breath. I don't have much time. Vanessa, where are you? I was wrong, Vanessa said, voice cracking. I thought I could play both sides. I thought if I gave them enough, they'd protect me from Marcus, from Armand, from prison, from being nothing again. Elena stood, already moving toward the door to alert security. What did you do? I helped them get close to the relief shipments. I told myself it was only money, insurance, leverage, then people died because supplies did arrive. Elena closed her eyes briefly. Where are you? Vanessa sobbed once, then swallowed it down. Athens, but listen to me. Armand doesn't just want money. He wants Blackwood ruined publicly. He wants Adrian to choose between saving you and saving the company. Elena froze. What does that mean? The line crackled. Vanessa's voice dropped lower. The evidence Maya found was planted for her to find. Some of it is real, some of it is bait. There's going to be a second leak, and it will make it look like your office suppressed files, like you protected Adrian, like restitution was a fraud. Elena's blood turned cold. When? I don't know, soon. There's a meeting tomorrow night. Piraeus, old shipping office near the docks. Armand will be there, Marcus too. Vanessa, go to the police. A bitter laugh broke through her fear. I tried trusting powerful men, then I tried becoming one of their weapons. I don't know how to walk into a police station and be believed. Elena, Vanessa whispered, I didn't become good. I don't deserve you pretending I did, but I don't want more people hurt. There was a sound in the background. A door. Vanessa's breath changed. I have to go. Wait. If I disappear, Vanessa said quickly, the key is in the lilies. The call ended. Elena stood in the middle of her apartment, the dead line pressed to her ear. Then she looked at the note. The key is in the lilies. Her memory snapped backward. White lilies at her apartment after the divorce. Funeral flowers. Wishing you peace as you move on. She had given them to the doorman. The doorman whose wife loved lilies. Elena grabbed her coat. Security followed her downstairs, protesting into their radios as she moved too fast toward the lobby. The doorman, Mr. Alvarez, was at his desk reading a newspaper. Mrs. Vale, he said, standing, is everything all right? The lilies, she said, the flowers I gave you after my divorce. Did your wife keep anything from them? A vase, a card, ribbon? Mr. Alvarez frowned, thinking. The flowers, that was long ago. Please. He saw her face and stopped questioning. My wife dries flowers sometimes, keeps them in books. She said those lilies were too pretty to throw away, though I told her they smelled like a funeral home. He reached for his phone. I'll call her. 10 minutes later, Mrs. Alvarez arrived from their apartment behind the lobby, carrying an old cookbook. Pressed between pages for almond cake were 2 dried lily petals and a white ribbon. The ribbon had a tiny metal charm tied into its knot. A silver key. Not decorative. A data key. Elena stared at it. Vanessa had planted it over a year ago. Before the gala, before her downfall, before her apology, before everything. Or someone had made her. Adrian arrived 7 minutes later, coat thrown over one shoulder, expression carved from stone. Elena handed him the key. His fingers closed around it. What is it? He asked. I don't know yet. His eyes searched hers and Vanessa. In Athens, Elena said, maybe running, maybe setting another trap, maybe finally telling the truth. Adrian looked toward the rain-dark windows. For the first time since Elena had known him, he seemed caught between 2 instincts, the ruthless owner who could command armies of lawyers, and the man under the awning who knew a single act of kindness could change everything. Elena, he said carefully, if we follow this, we do it on our terms. She nodded. No costumes, she said. A faint shadow of a smile crossed his face. No costumes. But outside, beyond the lobby's warm light, the city rain fell harder, washing streets clean while carrying every hidden thing toward the drains. And far away, near the black water of a harbor where ships waited like sleeping beasts, Marcus Vale stood beside Vanessa Cross under a broken warehouse lamp. You called her, Marcus said. Vanessa's face was pale, but she lifted her chin. Yes. Marcus stared at her, then laughed softly. You still think confession makes you human? Vanessa looked past him. A black car rolled slowly into the dockyard. Lucian Armand stepped out beneath an umbrella held by another man, silver-haired, elegant, smiling, as though the rain belonged to him. No, Vanessa said, voice trembling, I think it makes me dangerous. Armand's smile widened. My dear, he said, dangerous people do not warn their enemies. Vanessa reached into her coat pocket. Marcus moved too late. The small recorder in her hand blinked red. Recording. For the first time that night, Lucian Armand stopped smiling.